Hello there, Park Howell here. You're listening to a special musical episode of The Business of Story, featuring Dr. Seuss and a remarkable composer.
Congratulations.
Today is your day. You're off to great places.
You're off and away.
You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose.
You're on your own, and you know what you know. And you are the guy who will decide where to go.
In January 2012, three young filmmakers who were recent graduates of Chapman University's film school released their film called Oh, the Places You'll Go at Burning Man. The film was the brainchild of Teddy Saunders and co-directed, shot, and produced by Will Walsh and our son, Parker Howell, all three of them best of friends. The 7-minute film blew up on YouTube and was one of the first films to capture the Burning Man experience through the eyes and dialogue from burners on the playa reciting the legendary Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. While the colorful characters captured the individuality and artistry of the annual gathering in the Black Rock Desert of northwestern Nevada, the soundtrack brings the film to life. Today, the film's composer, Darius Holbert, shares how to create more depth and impact with your storytelling.
So I think that when you talk about like how music influences, I mean, if so many people will talk about if you're having a bad day, you get in the car and you put on a piece of your favorite music, and it really will influence your own emotions. It changes sort of the narrative for your day, I guess. I've always found it as an interesting kind of a exercise to think about the power of music when it comes to pushing a narrative.
Darius is an award-winning composer of music for film, TV, and new media. I learned, in fact, that music was originally added to early films to, quote, drown out the sounds of the projector. In his storied music career, Darius has drowned out some of the best of them. Darius has written scores for such film and TV luminaries as Robin Williams, James Franco, and J.J. Abrams. He has scored a number of award-winning films at Sundance, Tribeca, LA Film Fest, winning Best Original Score at New York City's Moon Dance Festival, and Best Score at the Los Angeles Film Awards. His work has been featured in hundreds of hit TV shows like American Horror Story, Grey's Anatomy, American Idol, and Better Call Saul, and in a multitude of video games and commercials. Darius has appeared on TV shows like The Tonight Show, The Ellen Show, and Fox Good Day. He studied at the University College London and the University of North Texas. He has been commissioned to compose operas, modern dance pieces, large-scale concert and chamber works. He has worked with major record labels in production and artist development. Darius has played in front of hundreds of thousands of people at festivals all over the globe and a million little honky-tonks throughout the American South. He appears on numerous records from various projects, including 5 albums from his critically acclaimed solo project, Darius TX. You'll hear some of that music later in the show. But as you'll also hear, Darius is really just a down-to-earth guy from Texas who works really hard. He hates bragging about himself, he swears, and he loves drowning out the projector. Today, you'll learn the importance of the singular narrative or theme in your storytelling, how to use sound design in your work to become immensely more memorable, and why standalone scenes or moments are the most important part of your written, oral, and musical storytelling. Our son, Caden Howell, is a graduate of the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, and he produces The Business of Story. So I know he, like you, will especially enjoy today's episode with Darius Holbert. Darius, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
You know, it's been 10 years in coming, at least for me, because the very first time I heard your the Places You'll Go at Burning Man track, I was totally blown away by it. I mean, it just brought that whole film production to life. And over the years, I've kept thinking, I've got to get Darius on the show. So thank you for responding to my request so quickly. And it's just marvelous to have you here.
Absolutely. Thanks for reaching out.
Can you give us a little bit of your backstory on how you became a composer in the first place?
Been sort of a long and winding road to get here. I was born into a musical family and did a lot of music as a kid, and went to performing arts high school, and then did a couple of degrees in music in college, composition and piano performance, and came up in Texas originally, and so I started playing a lot of honky tonks around the South and kind of fronting a couple of rock bands, and did some session work with country outfits, and playing in hip hop groups and stuff, doing everything that I possibly could. And then I got to a point where I kind of had reached the ceiling, I think, of where I was what I was gonna achieve being in the South. And I knew I needed to go to either New York or LA, so my sister was in Los Angeles. I actually got commissioned to write an opera, and with that money I packed up my stuff and crashed on her couch for a while, and then immediately sort of dove into the music scene here in LA. And then bouncing back between LA and New York, I was doing a lot of artist development, production of records. I worked with a ton of different acts, and then I was doing a number of touring acts as well. I was producing stuff for hip hop stuff like Wu-Tang. I was Britney Spears' musical director for one day. And
what happened there?
Oh boy, that's a whole nother podcast, I think. Conversation. But I was doing a lot of different production, a lot of session work, and I got into to doing some touring. I was touring with a woman named Sophie B. Hawkins for a long time, and then I jumped over to do a guy named Everlast, and then House of Pain, a hip hop group. We did a big tour, and it was about 18 months out, and it just kind of burned me out of the whole thing. And by that time, I'd had a couple of kids, and I kind of wanted to be closer to home, so I thought I'd get back into composition, which was kind of one of the things that I first started out doing. So it was a little bit of kind of a homecoming, and I got to sleep in my own bed at night, and sort of that's where we are now. I mean, I've been doing it for a good long time, and I can't think of any other thing that I'd rather be doing, frankly. So it's been good.
How many different instruments do you play?
Well, I play at a whole bunch of them. I don't know. I wouldn't say that I necessarily play them. My primary is piano and organ and synth and stuff like that. And then I play guitar too. And periodically I get hired to play drums. But then, I can kind of scratch around on the violin, and I've got a mandolin, a banjo, and I actually have a pedal steel. There's a record that I did with Everlast called Songs of the Ungrateful Living, which we wanted some pedal steel on it. So he said, all right, let's hire a pedal steel player. And I said, I tell you what, why don't you buy a pedal steel and then I'll learn how to play it, which was a horrible mistake for anybody that knows how to play pedal steel. It is a completely different alien instrument than any other thing. It's tuned all weird. It's crazy. But I do have that. And like some various wind instruments and percussion instruments, a lot of different stuff.
Now, can you tell the story about how you ended up composing for the Places You'll Go at Burning Man? Because I think it's such a interesting look at open source creativity.
I mean, it's been so long. I was trying to think earlier today exactly how it happened. I can't remember if Teddy Saunders approached me or if I approached him, because it might have been a response to a posting. Forgive me, I just can't remember exactly what it is. Do you know the story?
Yeah, as I recall, they did put a post out and said, hey, we are making this film from Burning Man. And this was before there was much in the way of any sort of film or video coming out of Burning Man. So this was 10 years ago. It launched January of 2012. Parker told me the story of they posted it out there, I guess, on Facebook, and just said, hey, we're looking for a composer. We don't have any money to pay you. This is a passion project, but we will give you as much exposure, of course, on Facebook and sharing it around the world. and they got several responses. And I believe they had sent you just a short little 2-minute trailer. And you and some of the other composers did some treatments to that, sent it in, and they gravitated immediately to yours. And then they sent you the whole piece, which, by the way, the folks here listening can listen to the entire Oh, the Places You'll Go at Burning Man piece at the end of the show, just as a little meditation and have some fun with it. But then you came back with the score completed to that whole 7-minute piece, and they said it was absolutely perfect. They didn't have one change on it, and you blew them away at how well you not only captured the story and the ethos of what they were making for that film, but how it so played into the whole Dr. Seuss thing.
Right, yeah, that's the part that I definitely remember. I remember that there were no notes, which I was surprised at, but also, I felt like it was a good score. The piece itself, the video was so, I don't know, it really resonated, and I know it's resonated with a whole lot of other people too, but it's just so magical. I remember the first time looking at it. It's one of those times when it seemed like the score kind of just wrote itself. It wasn't exactly like I did a first pass immediately and that was it. I worked on it quite a bit, but yeah, the visuals just lended themselves so well to the kind of scoring that I do, I guess. I mean, I think it was a great match, And yeah, thanks for reminding me. I didn't remember. I think it was Facebook that they had put the post on, and yeah, I'm so glad it worked out.
Yeah, they said it all just fell together. And a couple of years ago, my wife, Michelle, and I were in Melbourne, Australia, and we were downtown Melbourne and a little shopping mall area, and they actually had a Dr. Seuss store there where you could buy prints and all kinds of things Dr. Seuss, and the guy behind the counter was actually dressed up like a Dr. Seuss type character. And we got to talking, and we mentioned, have you ever seen Oh, the Places You'll Go at Burning Man? He goes, have I seen it? It's my absolute favorite. In fact, I show it here in the store quite a bit. And we laughed. We said, well, we're the proud parents of Parker Howell, one of the co-directors on the piece. And he pulled it up immediately and started playing it. And I swear to God, the guy started tearing up.
Hey Parker, how you going? Scott here from the other Dr. Seuss in Melbourne. Hope you're doing well. Just wanted to let you know that the first time my colleague played me your wonderful Oh, the Places You'll Go, The Burning Man, it brought tears to my eyes. Well done, buddy.
You're kidding. Wow.
It just had that much power, and I think it's a combination of both the filmmaking and definitely the music. So to that point, when you have a project, be it Oh, the Places You'll Go at Burning Man or anything else you do, when it is handed to you and you're brought in, how does your storytelling mind kick in to not only do the film, the work justice, but to amplify its power?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fine question, and it probably has multiple answers. It really depends on the project. It depends on how early I get involved. Sometimes with films, I'll get involved as early as the script stage, which, even before they've cast anything, or I prefer to get it after there is a picture lock, which is they're, essentially done editing. Everything's in the can already. But I have gotten involved in the script stage. In fact, there was one time I got involved really early on, and I was really excited about it. It was a film. This is probably 10 years ago. It was a feature film, and I was really excited about doing it, and I spent a whole lot of time on themes and treatments for the different characters that were in the script that hadn't been cast, nothing had been shot. They were just barely kind of dipping a toe into pre-production. And so I spent, hundreds of hours, I think, writing this theme for the main character. And so we were back and forth with the creative team, back and forth with the producers and the director. We were trying to get on the same page, and it just wasn't working. And finally we got it to a place where they were satisfied, and they said, okay, great, now we're going to shoot it. 6 months went by, they shot the whole thing. They sent me a rough cut pretty early on, I think. And I said, hey, wait a minute, where's this main character? And they said, oh, we cut him. So there was all of that time was completely wasted on I'm trying to figure out a theme for this guy. It became a completely different movie. So that's a long-winded way of saying that it's so much better to get involved once that they have a concrete idea of their own story, because I can't really do anything with it until I see what their vision is. When I get like a rough cut or a lock or anything like that, I I'll sit down with a creative team and we'll talk a lot about music and, influences that they may have, music that they might have played on set, music that they enjoyed, all different kinds of things. We talk a lot about that, and we do sort of a spotting session, which is where we watch the film and look specifically at time code, ins and outs of where they thought music could really help propel the narrative. And then I'll watch it by myself and I kind of go through it and think about, if they haven't given me a lot of instruction or a lot of notes or a lot of direction as far as what they wanted, and they're kind of open, then I'll, do a bunch of different treatments. I'll do sound palettes, which is essentially like using different instruments and then sending it back to them. And it's a cool way of working, and one that is so, I don't know, I guess it's really like found only in this kind of collaborative effort where it is like a complete back and forth. It's not just me, slaving away in a dark studio by myself for months. It really is, it's a back and forth, and there's a lot of discussion and a lot of like figuring out exactly how I can help them realize the vision that they originally had for what the film is, because invariably the impetus is from the filmmaker. It's their idea, their vision, and then I'm there to help push the story.
I've got a background in music composition and theory too, and I got a degree in it, but I'm not nearly as accomplished as what you're doing. I also hedged my bet with a degree in communications because I knew I could make a living in the advertising world. I figured I probably would starve as a composer, but I still do a lot of writing today, and I love it. And what I've learned, and I'm curious if you've seen this with your work too, knowing and understanding composition and theory. I mean, even the sonata allegro form from Mozart days is built on the 3-act structure of story. I use that training when I'm putting together long-form communications, presentations, PowerPoints, keynote speeches, workshops, and I think about it like a composer, thinking I am composing an overall experience here that is both me and kind of a performance art mode, even though it's business communication. But I think about the structure of the keynote, the PowerPoint, whatever, and I really go through, and maybe like you do when you were looking at scoring a movie, is where do I need an impact here? Where do I need a punch of a sound effect or some music here? Where do I turn the projector off and it's just me on stage, and go back and forth? And it is an absolute composition as it comes together. So when you are writing, in fact, let's jump to one of your pieces. You were talking about filmmaking. You sent me a clip, Found Home, for the documentary by Mark Covino. The documentary is called The Crest. Is that right? And your piece is called Found Home.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So let's go ahead and listen to a little bit of that. And then if you could share with us what's going on here in the piece and how do you use story or think as a storyteller to start crafting these pieces. So let's dive in.
So this is a cue from the film, like you said, from Mark Covino's The Crest, which was a great little indie documentary that I did a couple of years ago. Mark is also known for a really fantastic documentary called A Band Called Death. Any musician, any lover of music should watch this film. It's really, really good. The Crest is fantastic too. This piece is another one of those that sort of is like, oh, the places will go, in that it kind of wrote itself, because it's a really touching scene in the film where the two main protagonists, it's basically, the story is these two descendants of an Irish king go back to Ireland and rediscover their family roots. These two guys are cousins, but they didn't even know each other before the story was happening. So it's them talking about how they feel like they have found their home, how they found their place, their people. It feels like a homecoming, even though they're both from the United States. They get to Ireland and really it resonates well with them. So the piece itself is just a kind of a simple guitar arpeggio stuff. A lot of times I'll struggle with a cue and I'll go back and forth. I'll rely heavily on, my musical training, and then sometimes it's just I'll pick up a guitar and I'll start playing something. As I'm watching, I'm not looking at the guitar, I'm actually looking at the screen, the TV screen in my studio, and I'll just start playing, and then sometimes it just, it just happens. And so this was one of those cases where it was just kind of one take Jake, and I did the whole thing in just as it was rolling.
So that's, real musical accomplishment. To let your intuition just take over that way and feel what's going on in the story and then bring it to life in your music. That's pretty phenomenal. Let's talk about your other piece, the American Requiem, Elegy for the West. You've been working on this for 5 to 6 years. Tell us a little bit about the piece, and we're going to listen to Kiri with it.
This is a piece, like you said, I've been working on for about 5 or 6 years in between scoring, film, and TV and stuff. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. It's a large-scale concert work. It's for orchestra and chorus. Last year, we recorded the first 3 movements. There's 15 movements. It's in the traditional format of the musical requiem, which has a really rich and storied tradition, as you well know, I'm sure. Everybody has thrown their hat into the requiem ring over the past, 400 or 500 years. So I thought I'd give it a whirl myself, and I'm really happy with how it came out. There was also 6 filmmakers made 3 films to kind of dovetail with the 3 movements that we recorded. And the idea is that now we'll take the entire piece, and we're looking for performance groups and publishers and labels and things like that to do the other 12 movements, which will all also have corresponding films as well. The interesting thing about this, talking about storytelling, is that the way that this came about is completely opposite of the way that I normally work. Like I was saying, typically I'll get somebody's vision who made a film or has an idea for a film or a television show or anything like that, and then they'll give it to me, and then I'll write music based on what the story is. I'm trying to tell my own kind of story through the music, but basically I'm there to propel the narrative. However, this one I wrote without any, obviously it's completely different than scoring to picture. I wrote it completely as a standalone piece of music, and then the filmmakers came in and shot the films to the music. So it sort of turned the paradigm on its head, and it was a really interesting exercise about how different that is, and it really illuminated how the impetus when it switches from the from the filmmaker to the musician, that it really becomes kind of a different collaboration, a different effort. It was a fun thing to do, and I look forward to doing more of it.
As a storyteller, speaking to listeners out there that maybe aren't musicians or composers or whatever, what are the 2 or 3 things that from your world of composition that they could benefit from? Just your insights into, taking a listener from a high to a low, to the power of silence, to whatever. What are a couple, 3 tips in storytelling you could share?
That's a great question. I mentor a lot of young composers, and they always have a lot of questions and things like that. And one of the first things that I tell them to do, and I think this can function for anybody, to sort of illuminate the power of music when it comes to scoring to picture. There are various films that you can find on YouTube where the soundtrack has been taken out. You can watch like all sorts of different clips. There's some Star Wars ones that John Williams' score is completely taken out. And if you watch those clips, you can see, they're almost laughable. It seems so, kind of lifeless. And I think one of the interesting things is to really see how music can influence emotion and story and all these things that we sort of take for granted when we're watching it on the big screen. If you go back to any of these YouTube clips and you look at them without music, it really is a stark contrast of the difference. So I think that when you talk about like how music influences, if so many people will talk about if you're having a bad day, you get in the car and you put on a piece of your favorite music, and it really will influence your own emotions. It changes sort of the narrative for your day, I guess. I don't know if that really answers your question, but I've always found it as an interesting kind of a exercise to think about the power of music when it comes to pushing a narrative.
And I think people can use it much more in their business storytelling too. I know I do on this show. I go to Audio Jungle and download lots of different tracks, and I drop them in different places. And I think sometimes people might push back and say, oh, Park, you're overproducing. People just want to hear, you and your guests. You don't need that stuff. And yet I am like you. I am a big believer in music, in theater of the mind, and just the simplest little tracks, or the strains of violins, or having some fun with pizzicato cellos, which I did a couple episodes ago, can have such a dear impact on the listener.
Absolutely.
You're playing with their theater of their mind. You're lighting them up. And to me, music is a little bit like that sense of smell, when you smell something that can then immediately take you back to when you were 5 years old, smelling your grandmother cooking chocolate chip cookies or whatever. Well, of course, music has that same impact. And even when I first listened to the first strains of Oh, the Places You'll Go, Burning Man, it immediately takes me to that day when they launched that film, and I watch it just blow up online and how much fun that was. So I think that it's a dimension to business communication that people can be using a lot more effectively. Everything from their recorded shows to their on-stage appearances, to their workshops. I use music a lot in my workshops and sound effects, just to keep it interesting and bring that added dimension to storytelling to it. So, I mean, that's your world.
I agree. And just to interject briefly, talking about with, presentations and on the business side of things, absolutely music. The great thing about music, you can set the tone viscerally. You don't have to spend a lot of time explaining yourself. You can set the mood, set the tone immediately on a very perfunctory base level for an audience. It's the same with scoring. I mean, it's the same with a movie. You hear the low rumble of a drone of an entire section of bass. You don't have to be told what's happening. You feel it sort of in your bones at that moment when you get that there, right?
I've had walk-on music when I was doing a lot of in-person stuff before COVID, and I used Eric Idle's, Monty Python's Always Look on the Bright Side of Life walk-on music. And it was always so much fun, especially in a stiff corporate environment, because it immediately loosened them up,
right,
and immediately said, this is going to be fun and this is going to be novel. And then, of course, I had to back that up with the rest of my presentation. But absolutely, I mean, it sets the stage, and then it maintains that stage for you as you drop it in all the right places. When you are looking at a score, Darius, do you look at the overall story arc of either a piece, maybe it's a short film, maybe it's a TV commercial that was given to you, or maybe it's a long film? And then do you think, a la Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey, a story arc with your music, or are you found more in crafting the music for the scenes of the overall narrative?
I'd say both. And again, it depends on kind of the project. It depends on what's right for the film, what's right for the creative team, what they had envisioned, what works best. I think I've done both things, where there have been films where I've written the opening title sequence, and then I've written the credits, the cards at the end. And then I need to figure out then how to get from A to B. So it is more of an overarching theme. But also there have been films where that doesn't really work, and that you need to treat every scene as it goes. And obviously, I don't always write linearly. I don't write the cues in a chronological order all the time. Sometimes, but it's pretty rare. You spend a lot of time on the final scene, or spend a lot of time on the climax of the film, and then that kind of is the tent pole for the rest of the score, and it's how to get to those high highs and then how to come back down off of the climax cues. I'd say both. I mean, I think both. I don't try to be very rigid in my process, because I think it's important to treat each even smallest scene as kind of a standalone moment that you may need to do different things for. And you have to be open to all possibilities. That's why I never have my assistants set up a template. A lot of composers that I know will open up their computer software, their DAWs, and they will have a template that they use all the time. I mean, it's going to be the same template. Here are the strings, here are the horns, here are, everything is set up the same way. But I find that using that, you sort of fall kind of back into these ruts, and I don't think you're doing a very good service to the actual story. You're not treating it like something that's new, I guess.
Mm-hmm. We often coach about finding that singular narrative, and might be working with sales or marketing teams, and they've got a big presentation they're going in, and this could be an hour-long presentation or whatever, and they said, oh, but Park, we solved so many problems, we need to get them all out there. And I'm like, well, if you are trying to solve all these problems, you're going to have multiple narratives going on, and you're going to lose your audience. So let's figure out, what is that one problem we are solving for? Let's find that singular narrative. That's going to be our overarching theme in the storytelling. And then you're going to be able to introduce these other supporting problem themes that support your overall narrative. So what I want to know from you, Darius, when you are composing, do you find a singular theme, something that has a bit of a hook to it that you come back to in all different iterations throughout a piece, so that you also have kind of the singular thematic narrative going through with your composition, and then you can, take some detours into some other scenes, change up the music a little bit, but you're always pulled back to that one singular theme?
Absolutely. There's always some kind of through line. I mean, there has to be, otherwise the project becomes really disjointed. You mentioned Grandma's cookies and how that brings you back to the memory, and I totally agree with the power of music as how it relates to memory. It feels good to hear something that you've heard before. I don't know what it is, chemical, physical, what it actually is in humans, but it feels good. It's good to recognize something. And so I think that's an important element in film scoring, to have some kind of hook, some kind of something you can hang your hat on, that when it comes back, you realize, oh wait, I've heard this before. This I know what's happening now. This is all part of the same story that we're telling.
Now, you were just finishing up, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, scoring a painting project by an acclaimed Southwest artist by the name of Jim Woodson. And can you tell us a little bit about that project? And when I listened to a clip or two you sent over, to me, it sounded more like, and I could totally have this all wrong, but more almost like a soundscape. You are composing it, but they don't sound like songs as much as they sound like you are building an atmosphere with the music you're creating.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting project. I just started it fairly recently, within the past 6 months or so. This painter, Jim Woodson, approached me, and he had a new series of paintings. He's sort of a landscape painter of the Southwest primarily. Great painter, really great stuff, has had really wide acclaim for these landscape paintings that he's done. But they have these sort of ellipses, these little circles all over kind of the top of them. And there are other devices too, like kind of ghostly figures, a little abstract, but these little moments on the canvas. His idea was, rather than actually having a title for these paintings, he wanted to have a piece of music function as the title. And so we talked a long time about what that might look like and consist of. But, he was pretty much open to anything. So I enlisted a buddy of mine who is an animator to actually animate these paintings, that basically to put a cursor that typically runs left to right across the paintings. And these paintings are huge. They're 3 feet tall by like 12, 15 feet long. And so they're really, really big. And so my friend Tariq animated them to put this cursor on. So it's almost as if you're reading these paintings like they were a musical score. And so the ellipses function kind of as notes, and these ghostly figures function as like kind of chordal movements. So it's been a really interesting kind of exercise. So I'm essentially like reading the score from the painting, but also kind of helping tell the story of what the painting is as well. And you're absolutely right. It comes off like much more of a soundscape. It's not necessarily, there's no themes, there's no melodies necessarily, but the interesting thing is that there's always some sort of chordal element that appears, or that did appear during this process, that, again, talking about something you can kind of hang your hat on, that makes it feel like this is part of a cohesive vision. Each one of these paintings has some kind of like device that you say, oh, well, that's clearly number 3, or that's clearly number 6, or whatever it is. I think we've done almost 20 paintings of this. But yeah, it's been a really, really interesting project, and something I never thought I'd do, but it's been great.
Well, it's another example of how to bring dimension to your communication and your business storytelling. If you feel like your communications are falling flat and there's places that you can insert music to bring that added dimension to it. Again, this can be in the boardroom when you're making a PowerPoint presentation. Surprise your audience with a cool little tune up top. They won't see it coming, and you will definitely have their attention. If you are, doing podcasts or any sort of recorded video work, certainly be using and thinking about where music can come in and out to help accentuate your points. And as you said earlier, Darius, to propel your story forward. So a really good example of that in this particular work. The final project I want to talk to you about, I guess it's a fairly new solo music program that you put together, Darius TX. Is that how you say that? It's all one word, or is it Darius
That's
TX?
Right. It is Darius TX, yeah. And actually, I've been doing it sort of on the side for a number of years, probably actually about 20 years. There's 5 albums that have come out. As you can tell, I kind of do a lot of different kinds of projects. I find I work best when I'm not just focused on one thing, that I can kind of jump back and forth, and you can get fresh ears and come back to something that you've been working on before. So this is another kind of almost exercise for me to do other things besides just scoring to picture.
Let's pull up your track, Broke Down Junk. Let's play a little bit of that, and then tell us what's going on with this piece.
That's me in the corner where your windshield wipers won't reach. That kind of rejection takes its toll. That's me in the windowless building in my highway apartment job, making scenic turnout signs in my cubicle. That's me in the Dixie.
So as far as this and the rest of the Darius TX stuff, it's in talking about storytelling, this is really the only time that I get to write lyrics. Obviously, language is such an integral part of storytelling that it's a lot more, I don't know, I guess it's rewarding when it comes to telling a story and being able to write lyrics, because you can actually, tell the story. You don't have to intimate, you don't have to use allegorical elements of music. You can actually just talk about what you want to talk about. In this particular piece, it's kind of telling a story of my musical history, I think. I used to tour with this Darius TX project, and there was a reporter who said something about Darius TX playing Broke Down Junk to break your heart, and that kind of stuck with me. So it's kind of, I guess I'm telling the story of my solo side project in this one piece.
Just know it'll probably end up pretty bleak. That's me in the sky writing plain while you're inside watching your stories. I'm writing you epic blue sky sonnets that you'll never see.
And do the rest of the pieces in Darius TX, do they kind of follow the same theme of telling your story, growing up and as a composer?
No, actually, no. There are multiple different ones. There's, of course, a whole mess of love songs. You got to write love songs, right? And there's a lot of stories told from other people's different perspectives. There's a song called Godmother Earlene's Kitchen, which is about my godmother in Lake Charles, Louisiana, talking about her. It really, really varies. And I think the cool thing about this solo project is that, I'm not really beholden to any other stories other than my own. And I can, write whatever the hell I want, which is great. It's great.
What comes for you first, the lyric or the melody?
It really depends. It depends. Sometimes I'll get a great phrase like broke down junk to break your heart, and I'll try to turn everything around that. And then sometimes I'll just be singing in the shower and a melody comes to mind, or I'll be messing around on my piano and some chordal device will catch the ear. And yeah, it really just depends.
All right, final question for you, Darius. For those of us amateurs out there that are trying to put music to work, and again, a lot of us can't afford a custom composer, so we use different sources online. What should we look for or listen for in the kinds of music tracks that we want to use to be able to accentuate the points we are trying to make?
That's a great question. I think that the best thing that you can do if you are a non-musician, I also do a ton of library work. So I work with a bunch of different kind of boutique music libraries, which is exactly, I think, what you're describing. They'll commission me and say, and I've done various, like so many different styles. I've done an album of Thai folk music. I've done like hip hop horror music. I've done like mariachi music. I've done I've really run the gamut. And it's been fun, like incredibly fun to do stuff like that. One of the libraries that I work most with is called Alibi Music. I believe their URL, alibimusic.com, I think. But it's a great library because their search engine is so powerful that if you're a non-musician, you can go to this site and then you can just type in various words. Type in whatever, and because each of these tracks is tagged with metadata, it'll say, like you go there and you say, well, I want something like powerful, emotional, moving, for my presentation. Type in those words and there'll be hundreds of tracks that are there that are going to be, something that might be great for what you're doing. I think something like that is really helpful. If you can figure out a way to find the music based on kind of the more emotional terms of what you want it to do. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And I think one of the biggest hassles in trying to find good stock music is not having it sound like typical boring corporate music. And that's one of the hardest things. You sometimes have to go through lots and lots of different tracks before you find the right one. And I did just look up Alibi Music, and you're right, alibimusic.com. I've not heard of this before, so I'll have to check it out. Is it fairly affordable?
I'm not really dealing much with the side of that, but I know that they do blanket licenses, which are really helpful. So a lot of editors who do a ton of, say, commercial or trailer work, can pay a monthly fee, which I think is fairly low. I'm not really sure, but
yeah.
And then just use as many as you want. I mean, pull as many tracks, constant, and there are always new stuff. In fact, I was just working on some for Alibi this morning, as a matter of fact, some moody soul tracks. So, so yeah, I mean, if you go to there, I work with, 4 or 5 different libraries, but if you go to there, there's a good chance that you might pull a track that actually I wrote.
No, I'm going to have to look it up, and I love their headline on their landing page, Music to Back Up Your Story. So they're talking to our listeners right there. Well, Darius, thanks so much for being here. Where can people learn more about you and hear your music?
You can go to my website. There's tons of music to listen to and a bunch of clips to watch. It's dariusholbert.com. You can, find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can check me out on IMDb. There's a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place.
And you're composing for just about every medium, is that right?
I do a lot of different stuff. I get commissions to write for modern dance troupes. I write for industrials. I write for commercials. I write for in-office things. I write all kinds of stuff.
DariusHolbert.com. Darius, thanks so much for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and say hello to your son for me.
I will, and I want to thank all of you for listening to this edition. If you liked what you heard, please share it with your friends, family, music buddies, anybody that's trying to find some good music to accentuate your storytelling. Check out DariusHolbert.com. I've just so enjoyed speaking with him today, and I just absolutely love his music. And as promised, hang out at the end of this. We are going to play the track from Oh, the Places You'll Go at Burning Man. And the only thing I can say is find a quiet place, sit down, close your eyes. You won't be watching the film, but just listen to the score, listen to the people which are captured out on the playa at Burning Man, telling this Dr. Seuss's famous story of all the places you'll go. So sit down and check that out. If I can be of service to you, come on over to thebusinessofstory.com. And of course, if you have not yet taken my ABTs of Agile Communications course, now is the time to do that. Put this powerful, mesmerizing, and but therefore agile narrative framework to work for you. You'll find that at businessofstory.com/ABT. And until next Monday, when we will have another amazing story artist right here for you like Darius, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make sure it's a great one. And now, to make sure it's an epic one, take a moment, sit down, close your eyes, and listen to Oh, the Places You'll Go at Burning Man.
Congratulations.
Today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away.
You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself in any direction you choose.
You're on your own, and you know what you know. And you are the guy who will decide where to go.
You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. But some you will say, I don't choose to go there. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down a not-so-good street.
And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. It's opener there in the wide open air.
Out there, things can happen.
And frequently do.
To people as brainy and footsie as you.
When things start to happen, don't worry, don't stew, just go right along, you'll start happening too. Oh, the places you'll go!
You'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great sights. And you'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights.
You won't lag behind because you'll have all the speed. You'll pass the whole gang and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you'll top all the rest.
Except when you don't.
Because sometimes you won't.
I am sorry to say so, but sadly it is true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you.
You can get all hung up in a prickly perch, and your gang will fly on. You'll be left in a lurch.
You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are then that you'll be in a slump.
When you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done.
You will come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare to stay out? Do you dare to go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win?
And if you go in, should you turn left or right? Or right and 3/4, or maybe not quite, or go around back and sneak in from behind? Simple it's not, I'm afraid you will find, for a mind maker upper to make up her mind.
You can get so confused that you'll start to race down long-wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace, and grind on for miles across weirdish wild space, headed I fear towards a most useless place.
The waiting place, for people just waiting.
Waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go.
Or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring. Or the snow to snow, or waiting around for yes or no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting.
Waiting for the fish to bite.
Or waiting for the wind to fly a kite.
Or waiting around for Friday night.
Or waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake.
Or a pot to boil.
Or a better break.
Or a string of pearls.
Or a pair of pens. Or a wig with curls.
Or another chance.
Everyone is just waiting.
No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape all that's waiting and staying.
You'll find the bright places where boom bands are playing, with banner flip-flapping. Once more, you'll ride high, ready for anything under the sky. Ready because you're that kind of guy.
Oh, the places we'll go, there is fun to be done. There are points to be scored, there is games to be won.
And the magical things you'll do at this ball will make you the winningest winner of all.
Fame. You'll be famous as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV.
Except when they don't, because sometimes they won't.
I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play lonely games too. Games you can't win because you'll play against you.
All alone, whether you like it or not.
Alone will be something you'll be quite a lot.
And when you're alone, there's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some down the road between hither and yon that scare you so much you won't want to go on.
But on you will go though the weather be foul. On you will go though your enemies prowl. On you will go though the hacky cracks howl. Onward up many a frightening creek, though your arms may get sore and your sneakers may leak. On and on you will hike, and I know you'll hike far, and face up to your problems, whatever they are.
You'll get mixed up, of course, as you already know. You'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go.
So be sure when you step with care and great tact. And remember that life's a great balancing act.
Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left.
And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed.
98 3/4% guaranteed.
Kid, you'll move mountains. So be your name Bucksbaum.
Or Bixby.
Or Bray.
Or Mordecai Ale Van Allen O'Shea.
You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your